Oh, I'm still alive. Hey,
Welcome. So when we get into a room and we do a program or a seminar, everybody likes to sit there and hands kind of between their legs, just looking down or looking up at the speaker. Tonight's not necessarily going to be interactive, but I'd like to at least see some head shaking as we go through, right? So I know that you're listening, and I don't necessarily mean the head shaking you do when you're in class and you do the right, the head bob, that's different. So I'd like to see some head shaking tonight, hands up. Make me feel good, right? Because we talk about a model for vitality in a stressful world. Well, don't they say that public speaking is one of the most stressful events? I mean, I think Jerry, there you go. Jerry Seinfeld, I think, was talking about that, right? In one of his stand-up where at the funeral, you'd rather be in the coffin than up giving the eulogy. So I actually love to speak. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't feel stressed right now. Most of that stress came from running up the hill. Did anybody go up the hill? Yeah. I actually thought that I was in really great shape until I went up the hill. And then when I came in and they met me at the door and I was huffing and puffing, I thought, am I really the one to deliver this model for vitality in a stressful world? So when somebody puts together a program like this, it takes a lot of people to bring it together. So you show up tonight for an hour and 15 minutes. I just show up tonight for an hour and 15 minutes. And I just get to speak about things that I love. And yes, I'm going to move all around. I'll walk up and down, and maybe not up and down the rows, but I'll try and get into all areas here. So I think it's important to note that there's always people behind the scenes who are doing things, who are organizing things. And without those people, events like this wouldn't happen. People wouldn't have their lives positively impacted, or at least that's my intention tonight. So I just want to acknowledge a few people for being involved in tonight. Sabrina, Maria, Michelle, and all the staff and team and people who were integral in putting together this program. So I think for just 1 second, if we could give them a round of applause and just acknowledge them. Because my goal tonight, my objective tonight, is really that tonight is inspirational. Right? Let's not sell ourselves short. Let's go for inspirational. How do we feel about that? Does anybody want to be inspired tonight? All right, good. Well, I think that this is a topic that has the potential to inspire you. And I see some faces around the room of people I know and people who I've seen already today. Jill and Marie-Claire. And just a lot of people who have been in my life for a long time, who were involved in the progression and the development of the model that we're going to speak about today. And I know we have a very eclectic group of people. We have students, we have lay people, we have practitioners, we have therapists, we have people who maybe are struggling with a mental disorder, a mental illness. We have people who are supporting people who have a mental disorder or a mental illness. And one of the things with the current model that exists is that that model is designed to separate us, to make us different, right? It's really designed around the concept of identifying, labeling illness and disease, right? Giving us a name, and then finding a specific way to treat that illness or disease, which usually specifically means treating a symptom. Would most people agree with that as the standard model? Now, I don't necessarily mean that that's a bad thing, right? There's a role for that, absolutely. And my goal tonight is not to talk about tearing down a specific model or tearing down a model that exists right now, because there's a lot of amazing people in that model doing amazing things. Many of them in the room tonight. Many people in the room tonight who have benefited from those amazing things. So it's not about ripping down a model that exists. It's about opening up a new conversation. Because clearly, the model that exists, and I think the vast majority of us would agree, is not producing exceptional results. Not in terms of creating health anyway. Right? That model has a role for treating symptoms and palliating symptoms, making someone feel better. And tonight I'm going to talk a lot about mental health, but let's not pretend like mental health and physiological health are separate. Because we talk about, we're doing with an organization here tonight, and we're focusing on mental health and mental wellness, but the brain is connected to the body, and the body is connected to the brain. So they work together in an integrated way. So the current model really is designed to separate us, to make us different. And that current model, you may know it as the disease model. Right? And again, please don't hear that I'm saying that's bad. I think one of the things that's important to do when we get up in front of a crowd or share with our colleagues is that we just define our terms. Right? So we're all on the same page when we're speaking about whatever it is we're speaking about. So let's just call a spade a spade. The current model is a disease care model. Now, it's the most well-known model. It's also the most funded model. Right? It's also the most researched model. But if we look at results, and I mean real results, real lasting change for people, not just the palliation of a symptom. In general, and we have lots of specific individual cases, but if we look statistically, that model is not delivering the best health results. So the question is, why not? Does anybody here run their own business or self-employed? All right, so we have some self-employed people here. Now imagine if you were running your business, and every year for 50 years, your business produced worse results. Every single year for 50 years, your business kept producing results that were either the same level, which wasn't the level you were searching for, or lower and lower and lower and lower. Would it make sense to you that you just keep doing the same thing over and over again? Every year, in and out for 50 years. No, from logical people, we might step back and say, I wonder if we need to be looking at something different here. I wonder if there needs to be a new conversation. And it's emerging. I'm not the only person to talk about this model. What we're going to teach you today and what we've developed, I'm not the only person to come to these conclusions by any means. There's thousands and tens of thousands of people all around the world who are doing what we're doing. We've just put it in a way that's easier to understand, that's logical, and here's the most important part, that has a series of action steps that people can take. Because when it comes to illness, specifically mental illness, one of the issues is that we get stuck. Right? We lose our momentum and we become hopeless. We think that there's no way that we can move away from this place. And it becomes a very dark place for a lot of people. So what we need is not just people telling us what to do, but we need to know why to do it. It needs to be based on some correct principles, things that make sense. And then we need a model that works towards that. So that's the conversation I want to have today. I want you to leave here, whether you're a layperson, a student, a practitioner, or a therapist, I want you to leave here today with an understanding of actual steps you can take today, tonight even, to start to make your life better and to start to impact the lives of the people that you work with or the people in your family. Does that sound like something that could be of value to everyone? Okay. So now we have to do that in an hour. Okay? So, huge challenge when we take this on is opening up people to a whole new way of thinking in 45 minutes to an hour. So today's going to be very principle-based. We're not going to spend a lot of time getting into the details of what the steps are. I'll share with you some gems, some things that you can take away. But we've left a lot of material back there for you at the back that you can pick up on your way out. Start to understand the steps. As Sabrina said, we do a radio show every week, which for those people who have iTunes or go on the internet, you can find us on a podcast. All right, so every radio show gets converted to a podcast. So we're out there. You can find us. All you got to do is type in Dr. Jamie Richards or Life by Design. So as I mentioned to you, this quote's been coming up a lot in my life lately. There's some things going on in our profession, and this quote I've seen a bunch of times. And it says, you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. As I said, I don't want to tear down the model because there's some great things going on in that model. But I think if we just figure out where it fits, then we'd be better off. And then we can create a new model that moves us in the direction that we'd love to go in. Is it safe to say that at your core, everybody here would love to be healthy? All right? Is it safe to say, let's see if the arms work, you ready? Is it safe to say that everybody would love to be happy? So if you don't put your hand up, what you're telling me is you don't want to be happy, okay? So don't let me catch you. So I've never done a seminar or a program where I stood up in front of people and said, who doesn't want to be happy? And somebody put their hand up. Because it's an innate value. It's core to us. Happiness, love, caring for people, right? Integrity. These are core values. So what we need to do is we need to start matching up our life and our lifestyle in ways that actually are congruent with those core values. So we don't need to get rid of the existing model. We just need to create a new model based on where we'd like to go. One that's congruent, one that fits, and one that has action steps. Now, when I was piecing together the program, I wanted to put this picture in. This is my nephew, Finn. And Finn, I might be biased, and you know, he's partially my lineage, so I'm probably biased. But he's one of the cutest kids I've ever met in my life. I know everybody says that, but he is. And he was my inspiration for tonight's talk. Because I thought to myself, when I looked at Finn and his pictures, I said, there's no way that this child is designed to live anything less than an extraordinary life. Right? When you look at your kids or your grandkids, what is it you want for them? Or do you want them to have an amazing life, extraordinary, healthy, happy, well? Everybody, that's an innate value. We all want that for our children. But here's the question. As they grow up and they see what you do and how you live, and they become you, because that happens, right? Because we become our parents. You have to realize that no matter what you tell them, they're going to do what you do. They're going to follow your lead. So we look at Finn and we say, we want Finn to be extraordinary. But I realize if I'm not extraordinary, or if his father's not extraordinary, if his mother's not extraordinary, or the people around him don't live an extraordinary life, or move towards that, the chances of him having an extraordinary life have just plummeted. So that puts the responsibility on us. Because what happens with adults, and I see this all the time, is we really want to have this amazing life, and then somewhere along the way we lose that dream. You know, the old TV commercials, the little kids playing around and say, what do you want to be when you grow up? He says, I want to be middle management. Right? Those aren't the dreams and visions that we have when we're playing on this, in the sandbox or on the playground. We have big dreams, but we lose those along the way. So when I look at Finn and I know that we're designed for something extraordinary, but I look at the current model and I realize that what it's set up to do is allow people to become unwell, to lose that flame, that hope, and then to attempt to treat and palliate the symptoms of that process as they move down that spiral. Now, don't get me wrong. There's an absolute time for things like drugs and surgery, medical care. Absolutely saves lives. But here's a point that I'll stick on very, very solidly. They will not create health. Think about that. The question I pose to people all the time, I said, if I took your drugs for 6 months, would I be healthier or sicker in 6 months? I'd be sicker every time. You can't take a toxic chemical and put it into a body and not get sicker. Now, that doesn't mean I'm saying don't take them. But I'm saying we need to be responsible. We need to acknowledge the purpose, the role, define the terms of why we would do that. And at the same time that we treat illness and disease, we also need to be focused on doing what it takes to create health. Do you see there's a difference between those two things? That's a paradigm shift if you get that. Most people have never thought that treating disease is different from creating health. They are not the same thing. They're completely different. Right? I could exercise in order to prevent heart disease, or I could exercise because my body's designed for it, and I might prevent some heart disease. If you drink water, is that good for you or bad for you?
Good.
Good for you. Now let's say you have a disease condition that doesn't change. Was that water all of a sudden bad for you?
No.
No. That's the difference between creating health and treating disease. Now the cool part about the whole process is if you create enough health, guess what happens to disease in many cases? It disappears, because disease is nothing more than the absence of health in the first place. Right? If this room was light and we wanted to make it dark, how would we get rid of the darkness? Anybody?
Shut the light.
Turn off the light. But we didn't actually get rid of the darkness, did we? We just withdrew light from the room. So what we understand in these simple examples is that darkness is not the presence of anything, it's the absence of something. Disease is not the presence of anything but the absence of health. If my body worked right one day and it slowly started to not work right, and we could measure that and label it and give it a name, disease didn't jump in my body, did it? Right? Diabetes isn't lurking around the corner waiting for a healthy person to attack them. There's a process involved, and we have to understand that. So I look at Finn and I think we're designed for something extraordinary.